See, my friend, that's why we are beer partners.
It fades pretty quickly, at least in my iteration here in the bottle. Takes a sip,
Beautiful.
and then there's the foam all on top of his mustache.
Oh,
And he's just like,
mustache beer.
just so...
It's very intimidating. You don't want to mess with the baffo.
No.
Welcome back to Beer Brackets, everybody. Today we're continuing on with our journey of discovering Alessandro's heritage and going back to deep childhood memories, deep childhood beer memories from the distance that he has from growing up back in Italy. And we are tackling a beer that we touched on in our Peroni versus Moretti video, but now we're going to do a full, in-depth, deep mustachioed beer review of the Baffo here, the mustachioed man. You actually got one going on us there. It makes sense for you to be doing it.
Starting.
Yeah, it's coming along. Today we are doing a full review of Birra Moretti. We're doing these in-depth sort of like nostalgic episodes talking about our beer heritage. What does Moretti mean to you? Thinking about growing up in Italy, what did this beer represent? Was it just everywhere all the time? Was it as easy to find and as prevalent as Peroni? Was it a little bit different? Was it considered a little bit different by people?
Definitely, my friend. Well, first of all, like it's where I grew up in Torino, so up north, it was readily available as like one of the classic Italian beers that you could find anywhere. While I would say probably the Nastro Azzurro had a little bit more of a presence, as at least in bars when it came to tap, on tap. Moretti for sure was the one that you could find in bottles. When I was growing up, it was mostly bottles, but then slowly started taking on with the cans. I think now when I was there recently, it was mostly cans. For the classic L'Autentica. But you could find that like at any grocery store, anywhere. It was the beer that people would drink. And it's also probably the first beer, like I've mentioned before, the first beer that I actually went out and purchased myself with my money.
Oh my God.
It's a nice memory of it, for sure.
That's legendary. The first beer that Alessandro purchased with his own lira, his own money.
Exactly, and lira specifically, not even euros. That dates how old I am.
You know, growing up in Canada, growing up in Montreal, Moretti was a bit of a rare beer. It's funny because Peroni was available everywhere. Any street corner you could go into a shop and you could find some Peroni. Moretti was a little bit harder to find. In fact, I don't even remember seeing it too much around when I was in my younger beer explorer days. I remember starting to see it a little bit more about 10 to 15 years ago. It started to show up in stores. They really made, I guess, a push for it to be more readily available. So for my childhood days, this wasn't really a beer that you saw people drinking too much. So man, I'm excited to review this one. I had this one in the versus battle that we did recently, but it had been forever since I had it before. So let's get down to this in-depth beer review and let's see what score on 5 Moretti comes out with.
Let's do it. Moretti, L'Autentica.
We have to make the Baffo proud.
Yeah, he's there smiling on every bottle or can.
Do you know if there's any story behind the Baffo? Like who this man is? This mustachioed man in the green fedora?
You know what? Like I don't know exactly who he is, but I can tell you that when I think about Moretti, and I think most of people I know think about him.
Baffo Moretti! Continua. Che fa Baffo Moretti?
Like in commercials and you'd always like see him grabbing this ice cold glass of beer mug that has like, this
Beautiful.
nice layer thick of foam and just takes a sip.
Beautiful.
And then there's the foam all on top of his mustache. And he's just like,
Mustache beer.
just so refreshed after taking the sip. And that I thought was just like, yes, that's what beer is. Like just that feeling there. And he's on every single label.
You know what, my friend? As an elder beer explorer, I'm feeling the need to grow out a big mustache just so I can get like the beer, stuck on the mustache. You're almost there. You're getting there. You're going to have some mustache beer kind of soon. I'm tempted. It's such a visually pleasing aesthetic to see a line of beer along the mustache.
It is.
Well, aroma cheers, my friend.
Aroma cheers to you, my friend.
Let me know what you think. How do you say cheers in Italian again? I feel like I know this.
Salute.
Salute. Oh my God. How did I forget that? I should cut that out of this episode. Jeez, I'm ashamed. And I've watched all of The Sopranos twice, and I still forgot salute. Jeez, okay.
That's quite all right. Like, it's when you're concentrated as a beer barometer, like a lot of the memories escape, and you live in the moment. So
under the hot lights of the Beer Brackets pub, I forgot salute.
So
it's got an interesting smell on it.
It does.
What is that?
You know what? Like, I'm just realizing that other than obviously our recent episode on the
never smelled a Moretti?
I haven't really never analyzed the aroma like we're about to do, but it's interesting how like I always been thinking about Moretti as a little bit more malt forward, but actually like paying a little attention here, what I'm mostly getting is actually hop characteristics. Like they're very gentle and not strong, but compared to the maltiness, like I think the hop presence on the aroma is a little bit more prominent for me. I actually quite like this. It has like a good balance of the elements, but it's quite inviting. So I think I'm going to start with the 2 here. What do you think, my friend?
I don't know what I'm smelling. I guess that's the hops. It's almost like a bit of like a public pool kind of smell, almost like chlorine, but like chlorine like chlorine water. It's hard to, and that sounds like a strong negative, which I'm just trying to find the closest.
More like a mineral kind of like.
Yes. No. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm see. My friend, that's why we are beer partners, okay? Because I said chlorine water, and out of that you pulled minerality, which is what I was trying to say, and somehow you figured that out.
We're in sync here, my friend. We are in sync.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But yes, there's almost like a very just strong like mineral smell on it.
I can see that. Yeah.
And like I was remembering this as being really malt forward too, but nothing for me on the aroma. I'm gonna go with like a 1.5. Decent, but I'd like a little bit more maltiness there. I'd like a little bit more character. Well, salute, my friend, and let's take a sip.
Salute. Let's see if we can get that mustache effect.
Okay. That's nice.
That's very nice.
No.
Now I'm trying to identify with Il Baffo as he drinks that beer and then feels refreshed. And
we should have worn fedoras for this one.
It's quite a bit of a surprise for what I remembered and what at least like I tried to associate with the beer in my head. There is definitely a maltiness presence, which is the main star of the show, but the hops are more prominent than what I remembered.
Yeah. And
they balance that maltiness very nicely.
Yeah.
It's I like that descriptor that you use, that minerality, almost like a saltiness. It's not quite saltiness, but minerality.
Exactly. There's almost like a saltiness to it.
It lingers a little bit on the tongue, like, and maybe it's because like most of the time, to be honest, when I had this beer in Italy was mostly in association with some sort of food, so I never really noticed it as much. But having it now, like on its own, like it's quite present. So I definitely agree with you. I think I'm gonna go with a 1.5 here, not because I don't like it. It's just because like I think it's very nicely done, but there's nothing that is really wowing. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense, man. I think I'm going to agree with you, and it's going to be a 1.5 for me too. There's a little bit of that minerality from the aroma, a little bit of sweet maltiness, a little bit of hops, but it's very subtle. It's very drinkable. It's almost just like a salty sweetness. Almost like, that's the taste that we get off of it.
That's interesting.
Aside from the Peroni versus Moretti that we did, I've always just drank this beer out of a can, straight out of a can. I've never poured it out. And that minerality is really present. Love that word, minerality. Well, my friend, we are here at the Mouthfeel portion of our episode, of our programming today. So we need to do how excited you get to do a little bit of a refresher here.
That's the part that Il Baffo prefers.
He's all about the Mouthfeel refreshers.
Oh, yeah, it's because he gets a foam so he can have it on his mustache.
It's because he gets the foam. You got to think about when you're a mustachioed beer drinker. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, my friend.
What do you think?
Okay. There is a nice initial burst of carbonation.
Yeah.
It fades pretty quickly, at least in my iteration here in the bottle. It fades pretty quickly. You can see it's almost gone completely here. Doesn't quite have an oily stickiness like we've described a lot of times.
Yeah.
But it also does have it a little bit. Like I think that's minerality that we describe, or hop presence, like cleans off the palate a little bit with that bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick with a 1.5 here. I think that's a fair score. Like it's nice, it's good, but it almost like a little too much. It's lingering a little bit too much on the tongue.
I can see what you mean. I'm actually really enjoying the mouthfeel of this, especially when you first pour it out and it's nice and freshly carbonated. But you know what? It's like you almost expect it to have like that kind of sticky, oily mouthfeel, but it doesn't. But it's really kind of just like smooth and pleasant. The carbonation is just enough, but not too much, not too little. I'm almost getting like a little bit of like a strong tingling sensation as well. I don't know if that has to do with the mineral element that we're talking about too, but it's like very tingly. I'm enjoying it. It makes it very drinkable. I think a 1.5 is still very fair. 1.5 like middle ground. Not bad. Not outstanding. So now for the finish. What do you think?
So for the finish, as you were describing, like it's interesting you mentioned that like tingly sensation that you get. Like to me, it's there. It starts in the mouthfeel, but it's really in the finish where it shines through the most, to use a favorite term here. Yeah, I like how they've managed to have that clean, crisp finish with the hop presence that really like cleanses and lingers a little bit with the bitterness. That minerality really stays and goes through the whole experience, and then on the finish it's present. But not in a bad way. It just leaves like a signature, right? Like a little something that is different compared to other beers. So I think I'm gonna go with the 2 here, my friend, because I'm actually quite liking the way this beer finishes. It's clean, it's crisp, but it has like presence.
Yeah, as far as like a drinkable lager goes, little bit of that sweetness, a little bit of that mineral element that we've been talking about this whole time. A little bit of hops. It's flavorful enough on the finish that you can tell it's there. So it gives the beer some character. If you're not into the kind of beers that are just very sort of light, like a Coors Light, something along those lines where the finish is really muted. It's meant to sort of like after you take a sip, it's like you never drank beer at all and you just want to go in for sort of another sip right away to get the taste back. This has a presence, like it sticks around for a couple of seconds, but it's still very drinkable at the same time, which I really like. As far as lagers go, I think I would be inclined to bump it up to a 2 as well. I think 2 on 3 is very fair for the finish. So now, my friend, where all the intangibles come into play, the overall beer experience, how do you rate Birra Moretti on 3?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is a tough one because that's
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
Is there any nostalgia that comes into play? Like...
Oh, yeah, a lot. And I will say I tried like very hard like not to, but there are some flavors that brings you back like in time and places. So even trying to think about those and bringing back memories of being there and comparing also to other beers that I had at the time, I would say that a 2 here as an overall experience for me is fair.
Nice.
And I would have probably gone a little bit lower, but because of that really first few experiences that I've had that have kind of like marked like certain notes, let's say, in my brain, I think a 2 is where I'm gonna land. What do you think, my friend?
Awesome. Where this beer lands for me is somewhere it's in a very interesting, unique space within itself, because I think I have a fondness for Italy and Italian culture, and just the fact that, that this beer was an Italian, and there's so very few Italian beers that you can get in North America. So this always had a very special, unique place for me. I mean, if you're putting it up against its peers in the mass-produced lager category, it's very good. I mean, there's a lot of bad mass-produced lagers out there, or just subpar mass-produced lagers. It's a very enjoyable experience from beginning to end. There's flavor, but it's drinkable. It doesn't linger too much on the finish. I'm going to go with a 2 as well. I think a 2 as an overall score is very... And you know what? The fact, whether it's imaginary or not, I think the fact that it is an Italian beer, which is relatively rare in the beer space, I think adds enough character to it and enough uniqueness, at least because the overall experience takes in all these intangibles, right? So just knowing that, reading the can, looking at the artwork, and realizing where it's from, tasting that mineral element that we talked about and realizing, you know what, maybe there's just something a little different with the water that it's made with. Maybe this is just a characteristic of this Italian water that's put into these that I'm just not used to. You know, all these little things that you can pinpoint and pay attention to that just add to the beer experience. So it's definitely a 2 for me, man. Definitely a 2.
But see, you know what I think?
What do you think?
I think it's the Baffo effect.
I think so too. He's staring me down the whole time, just looking at me.
That fedora, staring at you with the mug and taking that sip. Like it's intimidating. It's intimidating.
It's very intimidating. It's very intimidating. You don't want to mess with the Baffo.
No.
So extrapolating our final score is out to a score on 5. And by the way, if you are curious as to how our rating system works, check out, there's a link in the description down below to our website that has a full description of the rating system. And also you can check out past beer ratings. So if you're curious to see other beers and how they do, if ever you're looking for a beer or you're in a beer store and you're looking around, you spot a beer and it's like, I wonder what beer brackets rated that beer. Head to our website on the beer ratings page and you'll see a whole list of beers and what that we've reviewed so far and the scores that they did get. So for me, it came out to a 2.83 on 5, which in our rating system is a good beer. And it is. That's a good beer. For Alessandro, it's a little bit higher, 3 on 5, which is still in that good beer category. My friend, this was a pleasure. This was so much fun to do. And let us know down below, what do you think about Birra Moretti? Tell us what your associations are. We're really curious about that. We like to think of ourselves as amateur beer historians and, you know, beer anthropologists. I like that one.
Beer anthropologist. I love that.
Yeah, there you go. Beer anthropologists. We love to hear people's associations with certain brands and certain beers and what they mean to you. So is Birra Moretti really available down where you are, wherever you are around the world? Let us know what you think about it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Don't forget to close your beer brackets.
Never forget. Never forget.
Never forget.